Gonna build a mountain.
I don't want to sing anymore.
We're gonna climb the mountain. Let's climb up that mountain.
Just please stop singing.
Oh. Okay. I know it's been a minute. I have like 5 people that follow me religiously. Let's get one thing off the bat. It took me a business week to finish Joker Folie Deux, okay? I just have the attention span of a squirrel on cocaine, okay? So that's why it took me a week. It's not because I hated it, but I am going to give my full, unedited, except for cuts when I'm trying to gather my train of thought, about Joker Folie Deux, starring Joaquin Phoenix and sometimes Lady Gaga. This movie, right off the bat, let's go through some controversy, okay? It was not well received. It was like a meta movie. They made the movie because to go like against what the audience expected. And let me get something off the back. Todd Phillips, your ego is ridiculous, okay? If you're going to make a movie like that, like an anti-movie that the audience is going to hate and not understand, why did you waste a movie studio's money? I'm talking like hundreds of millions of dollars. If you're going to do something like that, be like Francis Ford Coppola when he made a shitty movie, but he self-funded it. You don't waste other people's money to do some kind of project like that, some kind of experiment, okay? That's not what you do. That goes back to Lady Gaga. When you made Art Pop, and you made your pretentious Art Pop that I loved. I love Art Pop. I think it's extremely underrated. But at the time, she lost Interscope so much money because she let her ego at the time get in the way and make something that the general public wasn't going to understand. She made something for her die-hard fans, okay? I don't know who this movie was for, right off the bat. I know I'm pissing people off. I don't know who this movie was for. I really don't. But after watching it, and then I watched it again, I sat down on my couch for over 2 hours and I watched it. The first time it took me so long to watch it is because I took not one,
not two.
LeBron, tell us about that.
Not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6. Not 7.
Just notes. I have 12 pages. The film opens with a cartoon. It's kind of like an homage to cartoons of the past, you know, like old Joker cartoon. A lot of people have been saying, Me and My Shadow. This is what the cartoon was called. Me and My Shadow. It kind of talks about how Joker has a split personality. I think that is completely wrong, and I'm going to tell you why. Throughout most of the movie, and there's a lot of scenes, especially like in the first 20, 30 minutes of this movie, his shadow is the real Joker. He's literally there. Joker's getting let out of the jail, and then who do you see in the background? The real Joker. You slowly learn throughout the film when you watch it that his shadow is the person that was inspired by Arthur Fleck. That guy is the real Joker because we all know from all the people and everybody talking about it, Joker didn't want to be Joker, and that's whatever. Yes, because Arthur is being led to trial, and you can see the real Joker kind of like staring him down, leaning up against the wall. And that's something that was very important when I watched the movie back. I was like, oh, this motherfucker's been here the whole time. Arthur's shadow, me and my shadow. The shadow is the real Joker, okay? Right here. And another thing, all right? Another thing. Todd Phillips, all right? The first Joker movie was extraordinarily hard to watch. So this is what happened. It's like he went into the movie studio, he was pitching Joker 2, and somebody said, well, how are we going to up the first one? How are we going to make this movie really hard to watch? And then Todd Phillips said, let's make it a musical. Ugh. I have let men enter me casually, all right? I am a fruitcake. I know I'm a fruitcake, but the musical scenes in this movie, except for like 1 or 2 of them where they were kind of being like Sonny and Cher, and the one where Lady Gaga, she shoots him, spoiler, but it's all in their head. It's not real. That's the fantasy part. The shot is the fantasy. It's foreshadowing. It is foreshadowing. They bring it back. They bring it back to that moment. So let me get back to why I'm a fruitcake. Okay, I know I'm a fruitcake, but the music in this movie was, it was almost like an anti-musical. Was anybody really trying in this movie? Todd Phillips wasn't trying to get the audience's attention. He wasn't trying to please the audience. Joaquin Phoenix, it wasn't like Walk the Line when he played Johnny Cash in that movie. Great movie, one of my favorite movies. He wasn't trying to sing. Lady Gaga unlearned how to sing for this movie. So when you watch a really, really, really good musical, Sound of Music, High School Musical, the singing's good. The performances are great. So much of the singing in this movie was just bad. The performances were bad. And I think they were told to do it this certain way. I don't think Lady Gaga or Joaquin Phoenix were like, do you know what I'm going to do in this movie? Not try. And that's the part that pissed me off the most when I watched the movie. I don't feel like I understood why. This is an example, okay? In this movie, Arthur Fleck, he starts singing. He starts performing. He gets into his fantasy when he feels uncomfortable. So the music isn't about happiness. It's the antithesis of what most musicals are. It kind of aligns more with like a Les Miserables sort of thing. So I can understand a certain aspect of that, how it might lean towards more of like a Les Miserables. Like, I dreamed a dream in time gone by.
You believe.
This is a perfect example of this. Right off the bat, in the beginning of the movie, you can see Arthur Fleck, there's like a common area with all the prisoners. He's looking at the TV. Harvey Dent is trying to push the death penalty immediately. The Joker starts singing. He's envisioning something different, how he would handle it. Think about when you're in the shower, okay? And you start thinking about an argument that happened or something you wish you would have done or something you wish you would have said and how maybe a fight maybe could have happened differently. And you think of your best things in the shower and you're like, oh, I wish I would have said that. That's the musical elements in this movie. It's kind of like a hopeful thinking. Like, I wish things would have actually panned out that way. Or I wish things would go exactly like this. And that's the musical elements of this movie. It's not reality. It's a complete fantasy. It's what he wishes would have happened. After he breaks out of the musical singing in the common area of the prison around the other prisoners, and even in his fantasy, other prisoners are like joining in. It's happy, happy, happy. It cuts back to reality. He's outside laughing uncontrollably in the rain. He's soaking wet. So we understand from the first movie, he laughs at inappropriate times. Let's do a callback to that card when the lady confronts Arthur for making her daughter laugh on that bus, and he flashes that card, I laugh at inappropriate times. In this movie, he laughs when he's uncomfortable and feeling sad, depressed, hopeless. So after he cuts out of that musical scene, he's outside in the rain, soaking wet, laughing uncontrollably. Another thing, at the beginning of this movie, the guards, you got a joke for me today? They ask Arthur, do they have a joke for them today? And he doesn't respond. He doesn't say anything. He's sad. Sad Arthur. However, after the scene of him crying in the rain, he chats with Lee, Lady Gaga's character. He chats with Lee for the first time. After that, after he meets Lee Quinzel, he makes a joke to the guard again. But the guard slaps him after he makes a joke and says, time for your meds. That was a scene that I thought was extraordinarily fucked up, but that was one of the better moments of just good cinema in that movie. It really let you in to how people view Arthur and treat Arthur. So he did what that guard wanted. He told him a joke, and in response, he got slapped, and the guard was like, it's time for your meds. Something else that happened in this movie that I noticed early on was when Catherine Keener, who played Joker's lawyer, said, you're not Joker, you're Arthur Fleck. She encourages him to veer from the Joker personality for the trial specifically, in hopes that maybe he might garner some sympathy. She even encourages him to quit smoking, change his image. She says it makes him look, quote, cavalier. Lee, on the other hand, is the exact opposite of Catherine Keener in this movie, and she says, don't take your meds. You are Joker. So early on in this movie, you already see a disposition between Arthur's lawyer. Veer from Joker, don't smoke. It makes you look cavalier. You're Arthur Fleck. You're not Joker. He's falling in love with Lee Quinzel, Lady Gaga's character, who's saying, be Joker. I love the parts of you I love the worst part. A bad romance? She loves the worst parts of him. When we get to the interview, there's a big interview. I don't remember this actor's name off the top of my head, and I already started filming, so I'm not going to look up. He's getting interviewed. Arthur almost breaks into laughter. He kind of holds it back when the interviewer talks about Murray Franklin and him shooting Murray Franklin from the first movie. Arthur tells the interviewer he was going through a lot. It's almost like he blacked out. He couldn't differentiate reality from his imagination. He claims he was trying to kill himself on TV. That was his goal, was to kill himself on live TV on the Murray Franklin show. He tells the interviewer that he doesn't want to die anymore. Today, in this movie, during the interview, Arthur says, I don't want to die, but then I wanted to kill myself. But he ended up, it's like the Joker took over. So Arthur Fleck wanted to kill himself. The Joker personality is the thing that killed Murray Franklin. But in this interview, the interviewer challenges Arthur a lot. He asks Arthur, what's changed? And then Arthur says, well, I'm not alone anymore, referencing Lee Quinzel, Lady Gaga's character. Arthur goes into a fantasy during this interview because he feels uncomfortable and he wants to escape it. So he starts singing during the interview about how he is in love with Lee Quinzel. Fast forward some time, he's watching the interview back as if he was singing during the interview the entire time. We know as the audience that he wasn't. As does Harley, who is watching from a store window outside. Afterwards, I believed this was reality. She breaks the window and steals it. But I was watching and I was like, is this inner fantasy? Is this reality? I wasn't quite sure. But she ends up breaking the window and she steals it. During the trial, the prosecution says this whole thing is just a performance. The defense claims he created another identity, so this is Catherine Keener, to protect the innocent boy who was abused, and that person didn't come back out until he was attacked by those 3 teenagers in the subway from the first movie. Harley is essentially the Joker's spokesperson. They walk out of trial, and she gets in front of those cameras, and she's defending Joker. She's defending him. She is the Joker's spokesperson. She is not Arthur's spokesperson. She only loves the Joker. And that's another important thing. If you haven't watched this movie yet, I guess that's my goal with this video. If you haven't watched it yet, maybe knowing this before you watch it will maybe help you understand and appreciate the movie more. But when you go into this movie blind, it's a hot mess. She says, we're going to build a mountain. And people are like, what? What are you talking about? It's actually a pretty funny meme that's come out recently. She's like, we're going to build a mountain. And they're like, girl, what are you talking about? But the defense says Harley is going to fuck it all up. It's her goal to tell Joker, this woman, Lee Quinzel, is not good for you. She is going to fuck up this trial. She's pushing Joker. The defense is pushing Arthur. She is going to fuck everything up. Catherine tells Arthur the true story of her and that she's playing him for a fool. So she tells Arthur a whole bunch of lies about how she was brought up, how she ended up getting admitted, etc., etc., etc. She actually lives in the Upper West Side, and she admitted herself because of her obsession with Joker. She's not obsessed with Arthur. She's obsessed with Joker. So she admitted herself into this facility to be closer to Joker. But really, all she gets is Arthur. It's a bad romance. I said it again. And she has a master's degree in psychology. Lee Quinzel, Lady Gaga's character, has a degree in psychology. Arthur's not buying it because it immediately cuts to them singing together in a Sonny and Cher inspired duet. Until that's the scene where Lee, in the fantasy, shoots Arthur mid-performance. Some of the lyrics, you don't know what it's like to love someone the way I do. The musical shuts off because Joker says Harley is making it all because of herself. So they're singing, that line comes up, you don't know what it's like to love someone the way I do. All of a sudden, the music stops. Joker says, Harley, you're making this all about yourself. And she said, it's for the audience. She's about keeping the audience, the mob, the Joker supporters happy. She's not worried about Arthur. She's worried about the Joker's image. She is not worried about Arthur at all. And that's when, boom, the Joker says, "You're making everything about yourself." Harley says, "No, no, no. It's for the audience." That's when she shoots him. Immediately comes back to reality, sad of course. He's smoking. And he pretends to shoot another prisoner. And guess who's sitting next to him? The prisoner that was inspired by Arthur's Joker. The real Joker sitting right next to him. His shadow. What's right next to you? Tell me your shadow's not right next to you all the time. Harley, after all of this, after Arthur finds out that Harley was lying to him, she visits Arthur in prison. She says, "How you holding up? Is everything okay?" And then he says, "Did you lie to me?" And I wrote that in all caps. Did you, Harley Lee Quinzel, lie to me, Arthur Fleck? "Sure," she says. "I mean, everyone lies a little bit." He says, "Your dad's a doctor. You're rich." And she says, "I just wanted you to like me." Now remember, she's really, really, really inspired and obsessed with the Joker. She wanted the Joker to like her because throughout the movie, in the fantasy reality she's singing, she's putting on the makeup to look as much like Joker, the female Joker, as she can, Harley. But he gets enamored. He says, "Because you wanted to meet me? You did all this just because you wanted to meet me?" And she says, "Just to meet you," but she thinks she's talking to the Joker. She's talking to Arthur Fleck. So Arthur Fleck, split personality, depressed, low to no self-esteem. He is so happy in that moment. You did all that just to meet me? No, buddy. She did that all to meet the Joker. That's when she draws the lipstick on the glass, that famous scene from the trailer, while music plays. So we know what that means. It obviously didn't happen. That was all imagined in his brain, in Arthur's brain. She didn't really. That's the sad part about this movie, is maybe some things that happen in these musical elements, you're like, damn. Like, I remember watching the trailer and I'm like, what an iconic scene. It kind of sucks, and the thing that doesn't make it iconic is because that was all in his head in the fantasy. It didn't really happen. So it kind of just bums me out. Arthur is maybe the saddest person ever portrayed in cinema ever. But I think the moment, and I watched it twice. Like I said, I watched it, it didn't take me a week. It took me like 2 business days maybe. The Mr. Puddles testimony is the part of the movie where things really change for Arthur Fleck, because he's in his Joker regalia. He has the Joker makeup on. He's acting like an old-timey lawyer like this. But he starts talking to Mr. Puddles. And Mr. Puddles, we all know this, I'm sure you all have seen the clips, he kind of says, you, Arthur, you were the only guy that was ever nice to me. He's dressed in full Joker regalia with the Joker makeup on, but he's not saying anything. He doesn't break into song. He's just listening. I think it was at that moment where Arthur completely differentiated himself from the Joker and chose Arthur. It was in that moment. Because one person said, "I loved you, as Arthur Fleck. You were the only person that was nice to me, didn't harass me, didn't make fun of me. Arthur Fleck, Arthur Fleck. You were good enough as Arthur Fleck." And I think that was the moment that he left Joker completely. When the verdict is finally read, the courtroom gets blown up. The silence afterward was haunting. That's the thing that led me to believe, because the hardest part about watching this film is trying to figure out what's real and what's not. I associated any music with fantasy. There is a complete silence that is deafening after that courtroom blows up. Spoiler. That led me to believe that was 100% real. None of that was fantasy. That actually happens. I'm still trying to figure out who blew up the fucking building. It could have been real Joker. So he escaped and he sees Harley. She says they're not going away. He thinks they're going to run away together, and she says no. And she says the reason because all we had was the fantasy. He doesn't want the fantasy. He wants to be Arthur Fleck, not the Joker. She wants the Joker. And since he chose Arthur Fleck, they're not running away together anymore. And she says, he gave up. There is no Joker. That's what he said, isn't it? Then Arthur says he claims, Arthur, that he can't live without Harley. He asks her to please stop singing. She keeps breaking into song. That's the funny meme that's been going around. I even made a meme about it on my TikTok. She's trying to break back into that fantasy and get the Joker back. And he says, please stop singing.
I don't want to sing anymore.
A song that is winging along,
Just talk to me.
or a dance with a touch of
Just
romance.
talk. Stop singing.
You believe in all that we had dreamed. That
Just talk to me. Please stop singing. Please stop singing. And she won't stop. And she's singing the song That's Entertainment. So she ends up saying goodbye and leaves. She leaves Arthur. Then the cops pick him up. They find him. They take him back to jail. He's watching cartoons in the common room. That's the next scene. So they take him back to jail. He's watching cartoons in the common room. I believe it's Pepe Le Pew. I think that's what he was watching. I know it was like a skunk. And then he's visited by... You don't know. It says, Arthur, you have a visitor. This is the best scene in the movie. Spoiler. Just fast forward to the last 10, 15 minutes. If you don't want to watch this whole thing, this is the scene that was like, I would watch this part again. I don't know if I'm going to watch Joker Folie Deux ever again, but I was like, I have to watch this film. I want to understand it. I think it's so easy to just find flaws in something rather than find something to appreciate. And this can go to people you meet in life, anything. If you meet somebody and you just look at them and you're finding everything wrong with that person, you're never going to find meaningful relationships in your life. We're all extraordinarily flawed. So that was my attitude going into this movie. I wanted to find something to appreciate about it. And even if I couldn't, I wanted to understand Arthur in this movie. I wanted to understand Lee Quinzel in this movie. I heard about the real Joker being in this movie. I didn't realize how much he was going to be in this movie and how he was going to be such a vital part of the end of this movie. Spoiler alert. Those are the things I've learned to appreciate. I understand and I know Arthur Fleck better than I did from the first movie. By the end of this movie, I understood Lee Quinzel pretty well, even with all the bullshit lies. I figured out the dynamic between Arthur and Lee. He's walking to his visitor, and then he stopped. He's stopped by the real Joker, who says, "Can I tell you a joke?" Since I can't show a clip from this movie without this video getting taken down, I recreated it myself, I know. I'm going to show you that now.
Can I tell you a joke I came up with? I can make it quick. So a psychopath walks into a bar and sees this famous clown sitting there all alone, totally drunk. It's pathetic. I can't believe you're here, he says. What a disappointment. I used to watch you on TV. What can I get you? This clown turns and says, well, if you're buying, you can get me anything. Perfect. The psychopath says, how about I get you what you fucking deserve?
If you couldn't tell by my performance, the Joker gets stabbed to death. Then after Arthur gets stabbed to death by Joker, it cuts back to the scene where Joker and Lee Quinzel were singing, and that music cut off, and then he got stabbed. The crowd applauds. The crowd applauded Harley stabbing the Joker. He starts grimacing and wincing, and then he starts singing again after he got stabbed. I don't know if that was like an apology, like, I'm so sorry, I'll keep singing, I'm sorry I stopped singing. Like, she held all the power in that moment, in that fantasy, because that was not real life. Thank you for listening to my video essay about Joker Folie Deux. If I could give this movie stars out of 10, okay? I wanted to hate it really, really bad. I did not go into this movie, I'm going to tell you straight up, that I was going to love it. I knew it probably wasn't going to be a movie I revisit all the time. The first Joker movie I've watched probably a half dozen times, and it's still not my favorite movie. It's one of those movies where there's so much in it, you feel like you miss something, and sometimes you're just in a mood where you need the first Joker movie because you relate in a weird way. You're like, I feel like Arthur Fleck in this movie. The second Joker movie is a lot, but not in a good way. There's so much going on, and I think the reason I'm not going to revisit it is because Todd Phillips irritated me so much when he decided to do this movie musical experiment where he wasted, like, what, over $100 million of Warner Brothers money. They lost so much money because he made a movie that he didn't want the audience to like. He didn't want comic book fans to like. He didn't want the Nelk brothers to like. He didn't want the Joe Rogan fans to like. I'm not sure why he wasted other people's money to make this type of movie. If he would have self-funded this movie like Francis Ford Coppola with Megapolis, maybe I would have a different tune on it. So I went into this movie already extraordinarily irritated, not with Lady Gaga, not with Joaquin Phoenix, with Todd Phillips himself. That drove me crazy. I don't think this movie failed in every capacity, so I'm not going to give it like something as low as a 0, even a 5. I liked that Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga did everything in their power to make what they were given and what they were told and the performances they gave, regardless of Todd Phillips' wacky vision. So in that respect, and being able to understand through 2 watches the complete Joker narrative and his relationship with Lee Quinzel, Lady Gaga's character, I fully was able to understand that through just 2 watches. I think I'm going to give this movie, Joker Folie Deux, starring Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga, a 6.8 out of 10. And I would hope, and I think they're probably going to scrap any future, especially with a Todd Phillips vision, because this movie lost so much money at the box office, and the studio lost a lot of money, and it wasn't received well by the audience. I loved that scene where the real Joker, who was inspired by Arthur Fleck's Joker, I loved that. I loved, even though I didn't love that it took most of the movie for Lady Gaga to totally turn into Harley Quinzel, I would love to see another movie with just her in her background, because that courtroom scene, it just took so long to get to something. When that courtroom blew up, that's when it got me. That courtroom explosion and then that silence, it was deafening, it was haunting. That made that slug to get through that movie worth it. Everything from courtroom explosion to the end credits, that was fantastic. That would have got like a 9, a 9.1, a 9.2, a 9.3, but it was a slog to get there. It was a slog. So, because of the slog, 6.8 out of 10, Joker Folie Deux, starring Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga. You guys have a great day, and I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it for you. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I love you guys. Bye.
I